Hey, and welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to make a video about how to service one of these Oilbath handpieces. Something that you may have at home, really easy to use and very durable. Some tools you will need. First, a cogwheel. This is really important. You can't take apart a handpiece without one of these. Your screwdriver, as always, spanner or one of these, a hammer, and one of these. This is a Heineken made tool set for taking apart handpieces. There are a few bits in it. There's one of them. Fire, you won't need it for this job. It's got a few different punches, different kinds, and it comes with two very important things. One being the setting gauge and the other one being a 3mm comb. Right, so this is a 3mm knife. This is the Heineken gauge, and I also have a Lister gauge, which I will show how to use later. The nice thing about these Oilbath handpieces is that they last a long time, and they require very little service, but every now and then a little service is required. They do not have any bearings in them, which are kind of the part that it's the most delicate part of normal conventional handpieces. There's no bearings in the body, there's no bearings in the heel, so they're really durable. That being said, there is one part which might worn out, and that has to be checked, and that is the cup and post right here. And you want to check to inspect the cup and post before you do any kind of reparation work. So what I do normally is I take off this, the protection for the inspection hole there. I remove the tension knob, okay, the tension sleeve as well. If it's stuck, I'll use a plier like that. Tension pin I also remove. It's not necessary to remove it, but I do it. And the stop screw right there. This can be really hard to set in due to all the gunk and everything, but I've loosened it before, so it's kind of easy to remove right now. There we go. There. Keep all my parts right there. And then what you do is you make sure that the ball is at the bottom of its race, and then you lift and pull out the fork. It's always a good idea to have some paper handy to clean all the parts up. There's all kind of dirt and wool and fat, oil getting stuck to the parts. So what you want to check here is the post, this little part here. And what you're looking for is the signs of wear. It's kind of hard to see it when you're looking at it from here, but there is a little bit of a depression in that part, in the front. That is because as you push down with the tension pin, right, your tension knot pushes down on the sleeve, which in turn pushes down on the fork. The fork is resting onto the post, and so it will exert extra pressure on this part in the front of the fork, and that's why you get wear right there in the front and not in the back. And as we go and dismantle the post right away, you'll see basically the exact same phenomenon, only for the post. So we remove the post right there. Yeah, and here's what I'm talking about. Signs of wear, because what happens is this is supposed to be a perfect sphere, and as you can see, it's worn out there, but not there. So this is not badly worn out, so you could work with this, but you don't want to do it, so you want to change it. So we decided to remove the cup and post. This is the post, I'll put it there and get rid of it. And here's the cup. You can remove the cup just by simply placing it on this tool, using the punch, punching like that. There you go, cup and post and off. You might as well, while you're at it, check for wear and tear on the tension pin and on the tensioning pin cup, right there. Of course it's a bit hard, you have to clean it, you have to see very well. I judge that this one is still kind of very good, so I'm not going to change neither this nor that, but if you were to do that, you'd just do the same thing. You use the punch to remove it. One thing you have to be careful about is this little pin. That's the pin that holds the tensioning pin in place, like that. So when you punch the cup away, you don't want to damage it. You might want to buy a new one and so on, but it's kind of the same. And while we're at it, we'll remove the chicken feet so that it's easier to clean the front of the fork. So you spin them and pull, spin them 90 degrees and pull. That's it. Now that we looked at the front and we're kind of happy with what we're going to do there, I'm also going to change these screws because they look horrible. So I bought some new screws for this one. We're going to the back of the handpiece, and this is where an Oilbath handpiece differs from a conventional bearing handpiece, however many bearings you have, 2, 3, 4. Because since you have no bearings, what you have is a literal Oilbath. You remove this screw, boom, and so you can see that in there there's a space for the oil to go in. So how do you take this apart? You just do the very same thing you do on a normal handpiece. You hold this pin right there and you use your cog screw like that, gentle as to not to damage the threads or the cogs. Now I've loosened this previously, so it's a lot easier for me to remove it. If it's the first time you do it, it's going to be a bit harder, but don't give up and don't be too rough. As you see, I've removed this, which is our connecting rod with a worm connection here, and I removed the cog. I inspect the cog for wear. I think this is perfectly fine, so I'm still going to use it. And then I have to remove the front, or the other cog right there. What I do is I take my little screwdriver and I insert it into the inspection hole. I turn around until I see that the pinion in there is locking against it, and then I use my cog wheel. Cog screw. There we go. Again, I've also removed this before, so it's easy for me to remove it. Inspect the cog for wear and tear. I still think it's fine, so I'm going to use it again. And then I can pull out the whole assembly right here. Again, in a normal handpiece you'd have bearings here. There are no bearings here. So there's one part less for you to change. Right there. You can still clean it. It's always a good idea to clean all the parts that are moving. You could, if you want, remove the back joint cover here and inspect these. As a matter of fact, I think it's a good idea to do it, just to make sure that you grease the inside of these cups here. But other than that, this is a pretty solid part. As long as you see there are no cracks and everything, you can still use it, no problem. And now we come down here. There is actually a sleeve in here that goes all the way to the front, all the way to the middle of the handpiece, and that's where your crankshaft is, or your shaft, let's say. There's no crank on it. And the shaft goes around like that, and there is a little washer at the end. Now, depending on the make of handpiece you have, you might have a thread from this sleeve down there, or no thread at all. So it's up to you to find out what kind of a make it is and how it's built and so on and so forth, and to get rid of this or remove it, check for wear and repair, and change the parts that need changing. But I still think this is fine, so I'm not gonna change that. But as you see, you can just use a tool here, right, and remove it. However it's made, but you really have to find out what kind of make it is. and how it's made in order to take it apart. But as you can see here, here's where the oil goes in. We have a little screw to put it back into place. And if you do just this, it's gonna work for ages really. I mean, this is not the best handpiece, it's kind of unbalanced, it's really clunky and metallic and hard to, I mean, it's a bit hard on your hand after a whole day, but it works. So show it some respect, some love, and it's gonna stick with you for a long time. While I'm at it, I'll show you how to take apart the back joint. You just remove this spring, retaining spring. It's really hard to get to remove it, and it's really hard to put it back, but don't give up, you can do it. This specific model has got these tiny cups that go there. I want to remove them as well, like that. And as you see, you can then remove the joint cover like that. And here's your back joint. It's a very simple construction, yet very effective. On a normal handpiece you'd have bearings here, so your back joint would be a bit thicker. This one isn't because there's no bearings. So what you do is you remove it like that. That's it. Give it a clean, make sure that there's no parts that are broken or damaged or anything. When you're happy, you pull it back together like that. So we'll start and put it all back together from the bottom, or from the back joint. We start here. Alright, so we'll go with a little bit of grease on the inside of these cups. Always good to have them greased, and it's good to do this greasing at least once per season, because you know they get dirty and it gets worn out and it dries up eventually, and it's moving parts, so you of course want them to be greased and lubricated. Pull it back into the cover like that. You have to put the cover first. You can't put the cover after you've put the back joint onto the body. You have to do it first, and then you have to put these guys back into place. Now that you've put this back together and you eventually replaced the sleeve and any other parts that need replacing, you can just put it back in. I think it's a good idea to put a little bit of oil on it. There we go. And then it slides straight in, no problem, just like that. And that's it. And then we'll put it back together, put in the cogs first, spin it around like that. Put the screwdriver in there and use my cog key right there. Fasten it in place. There we go. Don't tighten too hard, just enough. Then we'll put the back one, and I start with the cog, which I then hold in place with my finger. I insert this one, make sure it's clean, oiled, free from rust, kinds of things, like that. Hold the cog, slide this in, nice and smooth, and here we go. Then we'll hold it right there, and then cog key once again. Tighten it, make sure you don't damage the cog teeth, otherwise you'll have to change them. That's why you want a cog key. Like you can remove the cogs with a normal screwdriver, but you end up damaging the teeth, so if you have to spend some money, I really suggest you get one of these. Okay, so this is in. As you see, I have my ball still in there. I never removed it because I knew I wasn't going to have to, but you might want as well just want to remove it and then put it back in. Just remember to put it back the correct way. So this is for the body right now. And now we're going to the fork. Here's the fork, and here's my new cup and the post. Here's the cup, and the cup is going in this way. Make sure you get it the correct way, this way and not the other way. This hole is cylindrical, but this cup is conical. So as you put it in there and then you hammer it into place, it should lock by itself. Be gentle, don't hammer too much or too hard, and if you are scared of damaging it, you can also use it, but it's not necessarily not necessary all the time, so you can just hammer it into place. There you go. Now that's it, and that's the new heart of your handpiece. Cup goes on the post, everything is fine, just like that. And then we'll move on to the next step, which is placing the post into the retaining nut right there. You don't want to lubricate the nut or the post, because that will make it slide, and since it has to be still, you don't want to do that. So I'll start with like an approximate position, and then I'll use the setting gauge to get the correct setting later on, but I think this is alright for now. Putting in the fork. Oh, and now I lost, no, the bearing is still there. I put in the fork right there, so a little bit of grease here at the end of the fork, and a little bit of grease in the cup, a little bit of grease in the pin cup as well, then a little bit of grease here where the chicken feet go. Always a good idea. Always remember to lubricate your handpiece either with grease or with oil. It's really important. You can never lubricate a handpiece enough, and if you're using a solid drive, remember to lubricate that one too when you're working. There we go. We are now in the way it's supposed to be. Perfect. Then what I'll do now is I'll put my stop screw. I got a new one because I didn't like the old one, so I'm gonna, it's kind of damaged at the top, so I want to change it. There we go. Right, perfectly fine. I'll put in the chicken feet. Make sure you put in the correct way. So this little edge has to be on the outside so that you don't swap them. Otherwise it's going to be a bit of a problem. Push and turn. Push and turn. There we go. Chicken feet are in place. I changed this circlip for locking the tension nut because the other one was damaged, so I'll put this one in, making sure not to damage the thread. Right there, there's a little hole right there where it goes in. Big clumsy hands. And off we go. Come on. There we go. Oh, that's it. It works as a spring by exerting force outwards and therefore locking the nut in place so that you don't lose tension during work. And tension pin. We got it. It's clean. It's nice. I'll put it in here. Make sure that it locks onto the retaining part. Clean out the sleeve. Just like that. Yeah, nice and clean. Put some new grease in there. Any grease will do. Unless you're really special about it, but then you don't listen to me, would you? A little bit of oil on the outside. Make sure it's nice and snug. Very good. A little bit of oil on the thread here. And we can put this back in. There we go. Very good. And then, while we're at it, we're going to put my new washer and the screw. Then we're going to fill this with oil. don't need a lot. You know, you do need some. It helps to spin it. Now that it's filled with oil, I put my little washer and the screw. Remember not to over tighten the screws, otherwise you might end up damaging them. And if you lost the washer, it's a good idea to buy a new one. And here we go. It's not going anywhere. Now I got my new combi screws. I can't recommend these enough. They're knuckle saver screws. They're really good for both for tightening and for removing the combs. Just make sure not to over tighten them. And they are way better than this, like 100 times. So there you go. They're inexpensive and they change your day at work. So if you don't have combi screws, do yourself a favor and buy some. And now is the time to check for the setting. You will need your 3mm cutter and a comb. Any comb will do, new, old, whatever. You place the comb bed, place it firmly there. Slacken the tension on the tension knot. Put your cutter in place, right there. And then tighten it with normal tightening, normal tension. Not loose, not extra hard, just normal tightening tension. There we go. And then you check for the position using your little setting gauge. Sorry, I have to spin it. There we go. There we go. And that's it. The setting gauge will give you the measure of how tall it is. Now here I have my pin that's coming out of this part. The pin is supposed to be within this and this, so you really have just 2mm to work with. So I have to fix the setting on this one, which means that I will go like that, give it half a turn, like, put tension again, there we go, see what happens again. Still high. Try it again. Give it another turn. Tension. I guess another quarter turn and then it should be fine. The older the parts get, the less you have to work with. You kind of get stuck. And here we go. You always want to change both the cup and the post. If you use an old cup onto a new post, the cup is still going to be worn out, so that's not going to work. They always wear out together and you always want to change them together. So don't skimp. Even though you maybe want to. This is alright. I think this is perfectly fine. There you go. We got the correct setting. If this were a Heiniger model, which it isn't, you would be using this gauge. And it's basically the same way, only you use these little scales to work with, and then you're like, oh, okay, so the fork has to touch this, whereas you use this little one here, or if it's at the bottom of the race. But Heiniger has got a very good video about this, so you can check that out. There you go. Use it like this. Put it at the bottom of the race, and in this case it will be a bit too high, so you would have to lower it. But this is not a Heiniger. So. Alright, and this is how you make it, how you fix, or let's say inspect and change those parts that need to change, and place the setting on one of these old handpieces. Perfectly fine. Will help you for many, many years. And that's the beauty of these things. You can change every single little bit that's broken. And if the body is cracked, you can change the body. If the bearings, no, sorry, it doesn't have bearings. If the screws need changing, you can change the screws. You can change the cup and post as we did today. All bits can be changed, and that's the beauty of these things. So, thanks a lot for today, and have a nice day.